Hi, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com. Today we're going to take a look at the 3-rail O-scale Amtrak UAC Turbotrain from MTH. The UAC Turbotrain was a high-speed gas turbine train that was manufactured by United Aircraft in the late 1960s. They were manufactured for Amtrak passenger service in the United States and Canadian National Passenger Service in Canada, which eventually became Via Rail. Now, they operated all the way up until the early 1980s, although they were always more popular in Canada than in the United States. Now, MTH cataloged this version of the Turbotrain in their 2010 Volume 1 catalog, and then they finally shipped them out in early 2013. The set you're looking at right now is actually a little bit bigger than the actual Turbotrain set that MTH sells. And that's because I've added in one additional passenger car. MTH sells an additional add-on car that you can add to the set to make it longer, so that's what I've got here. The set itself, when you buy the set by itself, it consists of the front unit, one passenger car in the middle, and then the rear unit. And then, as I said, I added in the additional passenger car to make mine a little bit longer. Now, I left that additional car in here for the review for a couple of reasons. Number one, so that you can actually see the additional car, and number two, so that you can know that it is possible to expand the set and make the train a little bit longer than it is when you buy it. Let's go over some quick stats and info on the set. The three-piece set itself has a length of 52 inches. If we count the additional car that I purchased, it has a length of 66 inches. The weight of the three-piece set is 4 pounds 11 ounces. Again, if we count the additional car I purchased, the weight is 5 pounds 6 ounces. As far as the pulling power goes, I'm going to mark that as not applicable because the set does not have any couplers on either end, so it's really not capable of pulling anything other than itself. So measuring the pulling power is sort of a moot point. The minimum curve needed to run this set is 0.72, and that is a requirement, not a recommendation. I tried to run this on 0.63 and it wouldn't happen. So you need to have at least 0.72 curves. If you've got anything less than 0.72, forget about it. It's not going to happen. On the inside, the set is powered by two flywheel motors. The first motor is in the front unit and the second motor is in the back unit. The set also includes two operating smoke units, one in the front and one in the back. And we've also got MTH's ProtoSound 3.0 sound and command package, and both the front and rear units are equipped with sound effects. Now, an interesting side note is that when the set was first cataloged back in 2010, MTH was not yet putting ProtoSound 3.0 into their O-scale engines. And so in the catalog, they said this set would have ProtoSound 2. But there was a delay in manufacturing these sets, and by the time they got around to making the sets in 2012, ProtoSound 2 was pretty much history, and so they went ahead and put ProtoSound 3 into these sets. And of course, one of the obvious benefits is that the set has all LED lighting. So the headlights and all of the interior lights are nice low amperage LEDs. There are two ways to operate this set. The preferred method is to use MTH's digital command system because that will give you access to all of the advanced features on the set. However, if you don't have DCS, you can still operate the engine conventionally with just a transformer and some track. And using different combinations of the horn and bell buttons on a transformer, you can actually access some, but not all, of the advanced features on the set. There's more information about how to do that in the instructions that come with the set. I should also point out that because this set contains ProtoSound 3.0, it does have DCC on board. But because this is a 3-rail model and you can't convert it to 2-rail operation, the DCC really isn't going to be a factor, but I did want to point out that it is there. The Turbotrain set has lots of great details and features on it, so now let's go in for a closer look. Let's start things off on the underside. There's not a whole lot to see here on the underside of the train because it does ride so low to the ground. But what is there is pretty nice. On the front and rear unit, you've got this little plow attachment on the underside with some nice detailing on it. And then this type of truck is on the front of the lead unit and the front of the rear unit. And it's a very simplified truck. You can see the wheels are in plain sight. And then you've got some nice side frame detailing here with brake shoes and steps and so forth. The trucks that go between the different cars on the set are very well done, and they're really one of the standout features on the set because, as you can see, they're very nicely detailed and they've got lots of cool intricate parts and so forth. I'll come back to these and you'll get a better look at them in just a few minutes when I talk about how the cars are attached to each other. Here's a look at the front of the train. We've got this really nice aerodynamic nose. Up here we've got the light cluster. These are all LED lights, and they consist of the headlight and the reverse light and so forth. I'll talk more about these when we start the engine up in just a few minutes. Over here we've got lighted number boards on either side. There's also a separately applied grab iron here and on the other side, and then some really nice cast-in details. This is a good spot to talk about the paint job on this set. It's absolutely perfect, which is what I've come to expect from MTH. Right here we've got a good sampling of some of the cool signage on this set. We've got the turbo sign here, a really sharp Amtrak logo here. Next to that we've got the U.S. Department of Transportation seal. Above that we've got a New York plate, and these New York plates are on both sides of every car in the set. And then up here we've got the Sikorsky Aircraft United Aircraft signage. Now for those of you who don't know a lot about the Turbotrain, you may be wondering, why does it say Sikorsky Aircraft United Aircraft? What does this have to do with airplanes? This is a train. Well, a turbine is kind of like a jet engine, and so for that reason, these things were actually designed by a company that specialized in making jet engines and aircraft, and so that's why you've got the Sikorsky Aircraft UAC logo. Here's a look at one of the many doors on this set. The doors do not open, they're just cast in, but they are nicely done, and you've got this nice signage down here as well. Moving on down, here's a sample of what you typically see when you look into the windows on this set. The windows themselves are nice clear plastic with black painted weather stripping around each window. I think the windows look really cool because they sort of look like airplane windows, which isn't a surprise considering that the train was manufactured by United Aircraft. The interior of the set is nicely detailed. There's nice soft white LED lighting in every car and a smattering of hand-painted passenger figures. Up on top, we've got the elevated cab as well as the passenger compartment behind the cab. On the front window, we've got separately applied windshield wipers. On the interior of the cab, there's a hand-painted crew figure, and then a couple extra passenger figures back here. On the roof of the lead unit, we've got a separately applied radio antenna right here, and then behind that, we've got the two smokestacks that lead down to the operating smoke unit. Now, in the instruction manual, MTH says to pour the smoke fluid down the stack, and it doesn't matter which stack you pour it down because they both lead down to the same operating smoke unit. But they really don't get specific on how you do it, and if you look here, there are grates on these smokestacks, and in my experience, trying to pour smoke fluid through grates always gets messy, so I try to avoid that. So what I did, and what I recommend doing, is instead of just pouring the smoke fluid through the grates, these covers are not held on by much. There's a little bit of adhesive underneath them, but if you give it a good yank, they'll come off like that, and then you can pour the smoke fluid right down that hole without making any mess. And then when you're done, just pop it back on like that. Here's a look at the back of the raised cab area, and I want to show you something inside real quick. You probably won't be able to see it because it's hard to get the camera in there at the right angle, but I'll try to show it to you anyway. You know, this is a pretty typical MTH passenger set in that the interior is not super high-end on the details. It's not low-end either. It's right there in the middle. MTH always gives you a good deal for your money and always gives you decent detailing on the inside of their passenger cars. But if you look down in here, and again, you probably won't be able to see it very well because of the angle. I've got a light down in there and you can just see part of it. There's actually a bathroom down there, and it's got a toilet with a cover on the toilet seat and a hinge on the toilet seat cover. I don't think the hinge actually works. It's just a cast-in toilet seat cover. And then there's a little sink, and that's probably the only thing you can see from this angle. There's a little sink, and there's actually a little faucet in the sink as well. And I thought that was a really nice detail. Here's a look at what the roof looks like behind the cab area and on the other passenger cars. It's not much to look at, but that's pretty true to the prototype, but we do have some nice cast-in rivet detailing. Okay, now comes the fun part, the joint between the cars. On the standard set, there are 2 joints. On mine, there are 3 because, once again, I bought the extra car. But the way it works is that there's a button here, and when you press it, it allows you to separate the cars or put them back together. Now the button and this whole joint area are covered up by this soft rubber diaphragm. The soft rubber diaphragm is packaged separately when you get the engine, and then the instructions tell you how to install it. So let me go ahead and remove it to give you a better look at what's between the cars. Here's what the soft rubber diaphragm looks like. And it should be noted that if you look inside, there's that little hole at the top. That's meant to hold this metal pin. So there is a correct way to install these diaphragms. You need to make sure that pin goes into that little hole so that the diaphragm remains centered and doesn't slide off or anything like that. Here's the button that was at the top of the diaphragm. So if I press that down, I can now separate the cars like that. If I pull them apart slowly, there's the locking bar that slides into where that pole is. I pull it apart, you'll notice these bars are pulling apart, and then there's a tether for the electronics. So I give that a little yank, that'll come undone, and now the cars are apart. Here's a look at the front end of that joint. We've got a single truck here with just one axle, that's 2 wheels. Here is the socket for the electrical tether, and then we've got all this nice detailing around it. There are some add-on and cast-in details on the end of the car here. And then here's a better look at that button apparatus. There's a tab on the other car, and when you push the button down, you slide the tab into this slot, and then you let it up, and it locks in place. And then lastly, we've got these bars here. These go into slots on the adjoining car, and they're a little tricky to get in when you first get this set. It takes a little while to get used to getting these things lined up when you join the cars together. I'll show you that in just a second. Here's a look at the end of the adjoining car. We've got the electrical tether that plugs into the socket on the front car. Then up here we've got the metal tab that slides into that slot so that the car is locked together. And then all around here we've got some nice cast-in and separately applied details. And then down here, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a slot here and one on the other side, and these are the slots that those long bars have to go into when you put the cars back together. When it comes time to reconnect the cars, it gets a little tricky, but with a little practice, you can get pretty good at it. The first thing you want to do is reconnect the electrical tether. There's only one way that it goes into the socket over here, so there's no way you can mess it up. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in like that. And now the next part is probably the trickiest part, and that is getting these little bars here to go into their respective sockets over here. Now, I've been working at this for a while, so I've learned that if I do the front one first here, let's get that in its little hole, there we go. And now I've learned to do the back one just by feel. So let me go ahead and get that in there. I used to have to lean over and look inside, but now I got it by hand. There we go. And now you push down on the button like that and slide that bar into the pin, and you'll hear it lock, and there we go. And now they're back together. And then the last thing you want to do is put the rubber diaphragm back on. Like that, and you'll feel it when that pin gets into that hole in the rubber diaphragm. You'll feel it, and it's in there. So there we go. On the other end of the train is the rear powered unit, which is almost identical to the front powered unit. It does have an operating smoke unit, a flywheel motor, and a speaker for the sound system, just like the front unit. But there are a few minor differences. Obviously, the back unit has a different cab number than the front unit. Also, the lighting configuration on the back unit is slightly different than on the front unit. I'll talk about that when we power this thing up in just a minute. And also, on the inside of the rear unit, the passenger and crew figures are slightly different than those on the front unit. Okay, the last thing we're going to do before we power this thing up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. You know, best feature is a very subjective thing. It's basically based on my feelings. When I take the model out of the box and I put it on the track and I power it up, what's the first thing that grabs me? What's the first thing that says, hey, this is a really cool model? And so, for me, when I put the Turbotrain on the track and powered it up, the first thing that grabbed my attention was the great lighting effects. And by that, I don't mean that it has super flashy lights. There are certainly other models out there that have far more flashy and more intricate lighting effects. But what caught my attention was the way that the lighting effects complement this model. They make it look very modern, very sleek, very contemporary, and very cool overall. Because this is a Protosound 3 equipped model, it has all LED lighting. So the front and rear lights are very nice looking, and when we power this thing up, I'll talk more about them because they're actually pretty intricate in the way that they work. And then the interior lights are perfect. They're white LEDs. They're not too bright. They're not too dim. They're perfect. They make this thing look ultra modern, sleek, and cool. You look inside, you can see the passengers, you can see some of the interior details. And when this thing's speeding by in a dark room, like on a night run, it just looks really cool, really modern, and unlike anything else I have. So for me, the best feature is the great lighting effects. All right, let's go ahead and start it up. And when we do, you're going to notice the aircraft origins of this thing because it sounds very much like a helicopter or a jet engine when it's powering up and when it's running. So let's go ahead and do it.
Is she ready to go? Ready to pull out.
Okay, here's what the horn sounds like.
Is that knuckle set?
And here's the bell. I know some of you guys don't like the crew talk sounds, but I'm going to go ahead and play them anyway. I like them because I think they're fun.
Now arriving to Boston on track 1, train number 153, the Yankee Clipper. Now departing to New York on track 1, train number 153, the Yankee Clipper.
Here's a look at the front headlight assembly. You've got the two headlights here, and then the blinking Mars light here. And then when you put it into reverse, all of those turn off and you get the red reverse light right there. Here's a look at the lighting configuration on the rear unit. Now when I change directions, that light turns off, the headlights come on, as well as the Mars light. Pretty cool. Now I must apologize for all of the visual effects that you're seeing. These LEDs may look like they're flickering. That's because they're LEDs and the frame rate of the video makes it look like they're flickering when in reality they're not. The only light that's flashing is the Mars light. Okay, let's go ahead and move it on out. Here's the passenger freight announcement sequence.
Now arriving to Boston on track 1, train number 153, the Yankee Clipper. This stop, Providence.
It's nice, you can hear people getting on and off the train.
Now departing for New York. On track 1, train number 153, the Yankee Clipper.
Thank you, everybody. Hurry up now. Be careful on the steps. No problem. Take your time. All aboard! Hurry up now. Is she ready to go? That'll do it. Tell them to close up. We're ready to go. You got a clear signal. Hey, the conductor's giving us a highball signal. We're ready to move.
This thing is whisper quiet when it moves.
Make sure the fan fans are topped off. How's she been running? She ran great, thanks.
Okay, that about wraps it up for this review. This is a great model. It's very cool and very unique. If you're looking to shake things up on your layout with something that's a little different from the average steam or diesel, this may just fill the bill. Now, if you're interested in purchasing one of these sets, the set itself, which consists of the front unit, one middle car, and the rear unit, retails for just under $800. And then the add-on car that I have on this set retails for just under $100. Now, of course, if you go through a good MTH dealer, you can probably get a little bit of a discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good train store, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can call them at 770-339-7780 or find them on the web at www.legacystation.com. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time.